For my tech video, I'm going to be teaching about something called Three.js, which is a JavaScript library. Three.js is used to create 3D computer graphics in a web browser. It was released by a man named Ricardo Cabello to GitHub in April of 2010. Three.js allows the creation of GPU accelerated 3D animations using JS as part of a website without relying on proprietary browser plugins. I'm going to go through some of the basics from the website and a couple of examples. If you go to 3js.org, you can get more information about this JavaScript library. You can see over here that they'll provide documentation, some examples, some source code, and common questions. We're going to go ahead and start with downloading. So as soon as you click that, it'll download a zip file that will contain the Three.js library for you. Once that's downloaded, you'll be able to go to your downloads folder and see the zip file. You can go ahead and click on that to open it. And then within the zip folder that you've downloaded, we're going to be looking for what's called Three.js, which will be right here in this builds folder. So we're going to go ahead and copy that. And then I've created a folder to host the example we're going to be doing. And in that folder, there is an index.html that I created that we'll be working with later. And I'm going to go ahead and paste in the Three.js that I downloaded from the website. So here we have my index.html file that was in that folder. And I'm going to go ahead and show this is where we're going to link the Three.js file that we copied over into our folder. So now we have access to the library and we can work with 3D images. So what we're going to be doing in this first code is creating two lines. So not too exciting yet, pretty basic, but important to understand the basics of what Three.js can do. So with Three.js, every time you're doing an image, you're going to want a camera, a scene, and a renderer. As mentioned before, when we're using Three.js, we always want a scene, a camera, and a renderer. So what these are going to be doing is we're going to render a scene with a camera. So for example, in what we're doing for our example of creating two lines right now, our camera is being set up with a perspective camera that passes in 4 different parameters. So the first parameter is FOV, or field of view. So this means the extent of the scene that is seen on the display at any given moment, and this is given in degrees. The second parameter is the width of the element divided by the height of the element. And you're going to want to do that so that you don't get that weird, distorted kind of thing that you might get if you're watching, say, an old movie on a different size screen. Third, the one right here is the renderer, and fourth is the size to render the app. Next, after we have our renderer, our camera, and our scene all put in, we're going to need to add the material. So the Three.js library has something called line basic material, and this is going to allow us to choose what color we want the material of the lines to be. After that, we need to actually add the geometry object, which is also found in the Three.js library. And after we've added the geometry object, then we can call this method on geometry and put vertices. So these are the points of the lines. So we're going to put at what positions we want these new points to be at. So here we have 3 different points of our line. Lastly, we're going to add the actual line by again calling getting one of the objects that's in the Three.js library. And so this line of code right here is going to help us actually link the dots together to create the lines using the library. Once we do scene.add, that's when we'll actually pass through this line parameter, and then the renderer will help us render the scene and the camera so that we can actually see the lines. As a rule of thumb, you're going to want to run your code on localhost It'll help with any errors you might get from just going and clicking your index file and running it in the browser directly. Sometimes there might be some default things in your browser that will block certain parts of your Three.js library. So you're going to want to run it on localhost instead of running it directly through your browser. So in order to do that, I just run this command php-s and then the home IP address, and then I'm going to run it on port 8080. So as soon as I have that running, we can go see the results. And you can see now that we have a line. So these were our 3 dots, and we've connected the line. And this is the first steps in making our 3D geometric shapes. Let's do something a little bit more exciting now. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out the lines, and instead we're going to make a cube that actually rotates. So again, first thing we want to do is grab our scene object. So we're going to create that as well as our camera, and this time you can notice that the parameters are a little bit different. We're going to go 75 degrees and some other parameters that are a little bit different this time. We're also going to comment out our renderer. And here, let's go. And our body, as well as creating the geometry shape and the material. To explain some of the objects in this part a little bit more, let's go over them here. So first we have the box geometry object, and this contains all of the points and fill of the cube that we'll be making. Then we also have the mesh basic material, and this is what will actually color the cube. And then we have the actual mesh, which is the object that will take the geometry and apply the material to it to insert into the scene and allow the cube to move freely around. Our material and cube, which are our box geometry object, our mesh basic material, and our mesh. So this is going to both make the cube and show the color of the cube. Now we're going to do the camera position at 5, and then we're going to have this function to actually animate the cube, which is going to come in a little bit. But it's going to actually render the scene and the camera. So to show what that looks like, if we were to go to our page, this is what we have. So now we have a cube. Doesn't look like anything too great yet, but if we use this cube rotation, so we're getting this object right here, and we're calling rotation on both the X and the Y, what that's going to do is now when we refresh it, our cube is actually going to rotate. So we can actually change and adjust the speed of rotation. For example, if we wanted to go much, much faster, we could set those both to 1. So as you can see, when we refresh the page, the cube goes a lot faster. So that's it for the demonstration, but if you want to do a little bit more advanced things, if you go to the Three.js website and go to the examples tab, you can see a bunch of different examples of things that people have put on the website themselves. For example, there is this cloth example where you can click on it and you can see that you can create this 3D cloth in the wind, and you can even do things like add a ball to it or collapse it with pins. And in order to get more information on that, you can just view this code here to then implement it into your own code. Or for example, here's something that was made in Three.js where you have a 3D car, and on the example you can see how the different colors can change. And again, you just go to view source and you can implement the code that's in this example here by using the sources found in the zip file that you downloaded at the beginning. So that's a little bit more about Three.js. I hope that this tutorial has been helpful and that you've learned a little bit more about the uses of it. how it can be beneficial, and how to get started with your own Three.js library project.